I foolishly volunteered to do a eulogy for my Aunt Blanche. And, yay, Aunt Blanche. And when I wrote it, I initially thought I'd be doing it at church, so it's a little bit formal. But now that I've had a glass of wine, it may come out a little bit more easily. But I have to say, I haven't rehearsed it, so bear with me. For people who may not know me, I was going to read my name. I am Anne-Marie Cadori, and I am Blanche's niece, the daughter of Blanche's brother Lawrence and his wife Helen. And we are the branch of the family who did not grow up in Philadelphia. We're Ravens fans, and Redskins fans. We lived in the D.C. area, which is, not that far away, but it is far enough so that visits to Philadelphia were really momentous occasions for us as children. And my memories of the childhood visits to Aunt Blanche's house are really recorded in my brain more as emotion than fact. So I don't have lots of details, but what I remember is that it was exuberant chaos. We were all sleeping on the floor, and everybody was hooting and hollering, and we were in the basement that John Fran had painted black, and I would play on the piano, and it was a wonderful, wonderful time. As I grew older, there really came a dawning understanding of the remarkable person that Aunt Blanche was, and a growing love and admiration for her. And I hope that my words do justice to the person that she was and to honor her memory. So I'm going to start at the beginning. Shortly after she came into the world on September 11th, 1925, as the second child of Marie Agnes Silk and Lawrence Murray Cadori, she was christened Blanche Marie Cadori. Now, because of the family's strong Irish heritage, Aunt Blanche was really fated to have been named for her paternal grandmother. So in the Irish tradition, you name the first daughter after the mother's mother, so Margaret. And the second daughter was named after the father's mother, and the third daughter was named after the mother herself. And so Blanche Marie Cadori's namesake was, I don't know if I have that in the correct order, was Papap's mother. Her name was Melvina Blanche Moran. And Aunt Blanche used to joke that she had dodged a bullet, because her name could have been Melvina. Blanche Marie Cadori became Blanche Cadori Murphy when she married John Francis Murphy II in 1948. Within 10 years, she had given birth to Blanche Marie, Nanette Marie, John Francis III, and Paul Christopher Murphy. And eventually, she became a Nana herself to Jonathan Eugene Leonard, Kevin Randolph, Lauren Elaine, and Andrew Michael Beckner. To Heather Fitzgerald, John Francis IV, Scott Patrick Murphy, and last but not least, to Christopher Michael, Kelly Lynn, and Ian Matthew Murphy. And more recently, she became a great Nana to McKinley Ann and Lincoln James Beckner, to John Luca and Kieran Sergio, and to Callie Grace and Kendall Faith Hierdigan. I hope I pronounced that correctly. And my heart tells me that we all share your grief at the loss of your extraordinary matriarch. Because even though she was your mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, we all feel like we belonged to one great big family. Now, one of Aunt Blanche's great gifts was a storytelling ability that I don't possess, but she had the humor gene, and many people in this family have that humor gene, including my father and a couple of my sisters. I, however, am not one of them. But she could keep you captivated with her very vivid descriptions, like the time when she was about 10 years old, and she was showing her sisters, Margaret Mary and Marie Agnes, how to do a swan dive. Now, the Cadori family spent part of their summers at a log cabin in the woods at Medford Lakes, New Jersey. So I guess Aunt Blanche learned how to do this swan dive by taking lessons, and one day she demonstrated it for her sisters. However, they were not at Medford Lakes. She performed this particular swan dive by standing on the top of her dresser and belly flopping onto her bed on the third floor of the family home on Lehigh Avenue. The bed collapsed, kabam, and none of us can remember what happened next, except that it involved our grandfather, her father, running up the stairs. And we've heard stories about Pap Kadori, so we assumed that it was sort of a scary moment for Aunt Blanche. Now, when I think Aunt Blanche, I think zest, gusto, exuberance. She loved to sing. She loved to dance. She wanted to be in the thick of the party, and she probably started the party. My sisters and I remember Aunt Blanche and my mother singing up countless renditions of On the Way to Cape May, Horsey, Keep Your Tail Up, Shuffle Off to Buffalo. At my sister Jeannie's wedding in 1999, at the reception, not in the middle of the service, but at the reception, Aunt Blanche and Jeannie were dancing to a Benny Goodman tune, and Aunt Blanche twirled Jeannie around so hard that Jeannie's necklace went flying off. She wanted to make sure I told you that. And then there was the time that Edward Kozakowski, where is he? He had a new convertible, that MG Midget, the red one. And he brought it to Sea Isle City. And I guess that was in the 70s. And Aunt Blanche hopped in the driver's seat with my mother riding shotgun, and the two of them peeled off down Landis Avenue. I don't know where they went, and I don't know how long they were gone. But we have a picture to confirm that it did indeed happen. One of the other things that Aunt Blanche told me later in her life is that her father would say, "Blanche, modulate your voice." Have you heard that story too? Okay. All right. Every family has someone who keeps all the family stuff. Yeah. The old photographs of relatives whose names are lost to history. The child-size wooden armchair that was handmade by the great-grandfather who came from France in 1848. The brush and comb and mirror set that belonged to her mother when she was a child. The scale from a father's medical practice. The school books that belonged to a younger brother. The mission-style chair that was missing a leg that came from the summer cabin at Medford Lakes. And bits of fine china from a mother, a grandmother, and perhaps a great-grandmother. I could go on. Aunt Blanche cherished these objects, not because they were valuable monetarily, but because they embodied a connection to beloved people who are now long gone. And I share that with her because most of those things are on my front porch right now. Really, and under a tarp. And they've been there for about a year. But they're not going anywhere. That's what I tell my husband. We're keeping them. That's just the way it is. My husband is a good man. He looks like Colonel Sanders, so I told him, if I start crying, you have to come up here. Aunt Blanche did not just care for the family's stuff. She cared for the family, too. All of us. I heard about the time that my father was out shooting pool with the guys when he was a teenager. And when his mother decided it was time for him to come home, guess who was sent to get him at the pool hall? Aunt Blanche. Big Sister Blanche. When a loved one was in the hospital, who sat vigil? Aunt Blanche. When someone got a new home, who wanted every single detail about every single room? Aunt Blanche.
Oh my gosh.
Right? She made people feel special. She made you feel seen and loved. She blessed you with holy water before you got in the car. And she rested only when you called to say that you were safely home. She stood in the street and waved goodbye until you were out of sight. And in an era of email and text messages, she hand-wrote letters in the most elegant script, reminding you that she was proud of you, that Nana and Pap were looking down from heaven and smiling, about your most recent accomplishments, whatever they were. That's right. You say it. Now, the last little bit that I'd like to say about Aunt Blanche is a little bit dicey, so maybe it's good that I didn't do it at church. As she grew older, she became, I think, just a wee bit irreverent. Throughout her life, she was a good little doobie. She did her homework, she went to Mass and confession regularly. She was responsible and hardworking and self-sacrificing. She honored the 10 Commandments. But when we got older, we talked about how challenging it can be for some people, us included, to say no when someone asks you to do something or when someone asks you for something. And we bonded over the concept that some of us simply have to say no and then just live with the guilt. That's just the way it is. So I guess it doesn't come as too much of a surprise to me that on her deathbed, I hope I'm not in trouble, Beery. Okay. She turned to Beery and she said, I'm going to tell you one thing. If I leave here and I find out there is no heaven, I am coming back. And I'm doing a lot of things differently. Now, I haven't seen her yet, so I think that's a pretty good sign. My sister Nancy would like to say a few words, and I forgot to mention that we're recording this. My sister Jeannie, who could not be here because of a couple of different things going on, asked that we record these things, so we've got them for posterity if anybody wants them, and my sister Nancy would like to say a few words, and honestly, if anybody else wants to come up here, I think we should sing On the Way to Cape May in a little while.
And I'm Nancy, and I belong to this elderly gentleman drinking 7 and 7 right here, and my mother, Helen. And most of you don't know us because we're the older generation now. When I see everybody who has little kids, it's very hard to believe that I'm no longer one of those kids. I'm 56 years old, if you're wondering where I fall. So when I was growing up, I was kind of in the middle. So there was Edward and Blanche Marie, and then there was Anne Marie and John Joe and John Fran, and then there was Lawrence and I, and then there was Paul, and then Michelle and Jeannie, and did I skip anybody? I said John Joe. So anyway, what I wanted to just tell you is just 3 things about Aunt Blanche that I just remember so keenly as I was growing up and as an adult. And the first one was that back in the day, nobody had a whole lot of money. But somebody would rent a house at Sea Isle, and we would all come. And it was in 1964, and my mother was pregnant with her last child, Jeannie, and Anne-Marie and I went to Sea Isle for a month. And every night, we would go to bed really early, I think like about 7 or 7:30, because we would watch the people next door eat dinner, and we would cry and cry and cry. I want to go home. I miss my mother. So, but are you having a good time? Oh, yes, Aunt Blanche. We're having a wonderful time. And in fact, during the day, we had a great time because when you're part of a family of all daughters, especially when your father was wild, and he was wild, you're not allowed to do very many things. But when we came to Sea Isle, if we were with our cousins, we could run around. So not that we did anything wrong, but we could go and play, and that was a great time, which I remember very well. We could go barefooted. We could cross the street by ourselves. You know, we could, there was a boy in one of the orphanages that liked Anne Marie, and we always would go and spy on him. And do you remember that? So But there was this one day that, so was I 6? I was 6. So that meant Anne Marie was 10. And one day on the Horsey house, there was a swing. And I was on the swing just crying, just crying and crying. And Aunt Blanche came out and she sat beside me and she said, "What is the matter?" And I said, "I can't go with the big kids." And she just sat with me for maybe 10 or 15 minutes. And of course, there was mass chaos. And she said, "You're just not old enough yet." And I would say, "But I want to be old enough," because my name was Me Too. I had to do everything that Anne Marie did. And of course, I was 4 years younger or 3.5 years younger. So of course, there were things that I wasn't permitted to do at that age. And I just remember thinking, like, this is the end of the world. So that was the one time that I really remember that she was so kind to me and really took the time out of her, busy day to pay attention to her little niece that was crying on the front porch. So now we move ahead to 1990. So in 1990, I graduated from medical school. So I was pretty old. I was 35. And at that time, I had interviewed for a residency at the University of Pennsylvania. And I asked Aunt Blanche if I could spend the night. And my boyfriend stayed in a hotel, but we took her out to dinner. And I don't remember the restaurant or anything like that. But Aunt Blanche loved to go out to dinner. And we had a great time. And she talked and laughed, and I have no idea what she ate. But anyway, Tony went back to the hotel, and I went back to her house. And then she told me, she goes, "Oh, I liked your other boyfriend much better than him." And I just thought, like, well, how nice that she paid attention. She actually knew that, like, this other person that I had gone out with. And I really felt so, like, she liked her peeps, I felt very loved by her. So anyway, the next day, this was really funny. So I had my suitcase, and Uncle John drove, and Aunt Blanche was in the front, and I was in the back, and they dropped me off at, I don't know, one of the University of Pennsylvania's hospitals in the city. And I kissed them goodbye and said, "Thank you very much." And I, go down the hall, and maybe I was in there about 5 minutes. I hear this woman running down the hall going, "Psst, psst." And she goes, Nancy, do you sure you know what you're doing?" And I just thought that was so sweet that she just kept saying, she goes, "I really did a bad thing. I should have told my daughters to go to medical school." But it was very funny. Like, I was 35, and she still thought, like, oh, maybe she needs help, So I thought it was so sweet. And the last story is about our son, Evan, who, again, I have always done things very differently than other people, like get married late. My son was born when I was 40, so he's 15, and he's about this tall and looks like a linebacker. But he's in school today and couldn't come, and he has an awards banquet tonight. So anyway, so this was Aunt Blanche came to visit Anne Marie and George in 2008, I believe. And Evan was about 10. And Aunt Blanche could tell a story, as you all know, better than anyone on earth. And all you wanted to do was sit beside Aunt Blanche. You just, wanted to be in the thick of things. And she must have been saying, I don't know, I don't think she had been drinking, but she was just... But she was saying, she was just very exuberant about it. And she said a few curse words, which I don't remember, but Rick does. And later, for some reason, our son does not curse. And in fact, he is the word police in our family. He says, "Mom, you're not supposed to say that. That's not a nice word." And he to this day, it's kind of amazing. So anyway, afterwards he goes, "Mom," he goes, "that lady, she uses bad words." So I thought that was great. That lady uses bad words. So anyway, those are just the things that I wanted to say about Aunt Blanche. And she really did make you feel that you belonged and that you were loved. And I really will miss her. So thank you.
quite a few years ago because my father was still alive. My mother was in the hospital and asked kindly that my father bring the bottle of holy water. And you must know that my mother took whatever bottle she had available to church and filled it with holy water. So my father brings what my mother believes is the bottle of holy water, and she puts it next to the bed, and the little nurse comes in, and as my mother tells it was a little Jewish nurse, and she took good care of her, and she said, "Dear, before you go, let me bless you with some holy water." And so she picked up the bottle, and she opened it, and she sprinkled it in her hand, and she blessed this little nurse. And she looked at my mother and said, "Mrs. Murphy, is holy water supposed to smell like Listerine?" And indeed, it was Listerine.
She was everything that you all said that she was. I'm her oldest grandson. Hold on. And I want to tell you a story about just how sweet and wonderful. Hold on one sec. When our son, who's crying over there making all that noise, was born. Hold on. He was in the NICU for about a month. When he was born, he wasn't breathing. He wasn't breathing. His heart wasn't beating, and it was a very traumatic scenario. We didn't know if he was going to make it. And when she heard about that, she said, "God can take me if he'll let Lincoln live." And as funny and hilarious and caring and giving as she was, that was her heart, that she would give up herself for anybody and anyone who she came into contact with.
And we're lucky that he made it because, as my dad told you, he wasn't breathing and his heart wasn't beating. So we're glad that he made it.
John Joe, you want to talk about the big box we had at the Horsey house when they got a new washer? Yeah. And we said that this washing machine will get your clothes as clean as dumping them in the dirt 2 times. Remember that? Yeah, same time. Yeah, when we were crying. It was only when we laid down to go to sleep and we missed our mommy. Yeah. And when our daddy came, we went.
When you say that. I don't remember you saying that.
So, anybody want to sing a song? B-Ree, where the heck are you? On the way to Cape May, I fell in love with you. On the way to Cape May.
My dreams come true. I was thinking by your smile as we drifted by Sea Isle. My heart was home when we traveled along.
On the way to Cape May.
Stone Harbor skies were blue. We were in the day when Wildwood came in view. I was gonna be my spouse. We better head to the courthouse. On the way to Cape May. On the way to Cape May.
Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Up above the world so high, shines upon, then you show your little light. Twinkle, twinkle all the night. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are.